Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Maverick Mind, or a massive welcome as always if you're joining me for the very, very first time. This week, we're talking all things confidence, empowerment, embodiment, and personal branding. And I'm bringing you a incredible guest who is just a real wealth of knowledge in those topics. And they've come from a story that has a lot of light and shade. As I say so often, the best movies, the best pieces of art, the best stories, the best people always have a lot of light and shade. The best paintings have light and shade. It brings form, it brings intrigue to a life. And for this person, it's brought so much wisdom, and I cannot wait for you to meet her. This week, I am joined by the very beautiful Shaylnn Lavelle. Her life has been a real testament to the power of reinvention. Each chapter in her life has demanded big, bold leaps into the unknown and just kind of figuring things out along her way. She walked away from a life of addiction and she got sober at the age of 19. Which was kind of a catalyst for a major transformation. She also spent many years in the underground worlds of money, sex, and power as a stripper. She earned a BA in business by day and she was dancing by night. And the combination of doing those two things at the same time, I think, gave her such business savvy. And she has such incredible insight and business knowledge from that time in her life, or entrepreneurship advice from that point in her life, that I think will put a lot of the bro marketers to shame, to be quite honest. She was such a savvy businesswoman at that time in her life, and she is now still, of course. Now she is a mother and a digital nomad too. She lives in Thailand. So there's kind of one thing about her story that I think underpins a lot of her message, and that is that true freedom is not illogical or safe. It requires big leaps. And as I said earlier, figuring things out later. Her journey is raw, and she's walked through a lot of fires, from addiction to the stigma of being a stripper to motherhood, entrepreneurship, now living halfway across the world from the rest of her family. And she's turned every challenge into a huge catalyst for growth and deep wisdom that she now shares with her clients. So she now helps people through understanding their power, their embodiment, their self-expression, their creative success, and their own personal branding, the way they kind of put their message out into the world. So this is such a great episode, you guys, and I so loved chatting to Shay, and I really think you'll love listening to this. So Shaylnn Lavelle, a massive warm welcome to Maverick Mind. Shay, a massive warm welcome to Maverick Mind. I'm so excited to have you here and to dive into this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. So first, to kind of let the audience know a little bit more about you and your background, I'd love to know where you're from and maybe what your childhood was like.
And maybe what my what?
Childhood was like,
Oh,
or
my
growing up
child.
like, or like what growing up was like for you. Because I think a lot of us,
Okay.
we're speaking to creative, so a lot of us, we have a creative spark from a very young age, and then kind of when we're younger, it kind of forms our opinion or maybe our relationship with that creativity. So it's something I really love to know about people is a kind of what we were like before everyone kind of told us that chasing a creative life or being a creative person was something that was impossible. I find it really interesting to
Yeah.
dive into that question.
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. Okay. So I am currently traveling around Thailand, and I'm a single mom living with my daughter. And my childhood, what was that like? I distinctly remember I believed in a lot of magic. And I feel like since I was a child, I have tuned into these really, yeah, these like imaginative play kind of ways of being a kid. And I didn't have a lot of friends growing up because I didn't speak English. I feel like I was picked on and like bullied a little bit because of that. And that pushed me even deeper into like exploring other ways of imaginative play instead of like playing with other friends. I was the girl that was like picking leaves and flowers and like mashing them up and like creating spells to like cast on other people who were mean to me.
Love that.
It was so funny. And I also remember feeling like, because I mentioned, I didn't speak English when I was going to grade school. And so I feel like because there were a lot of other kids picking on me, like I felt silenced in a lot of ways, like, oh, like I'm just not heard. Like I can't speak the language. People don't understand me. So I've always had like such a strong, strong sense to express myself. So when I was at home, I would pretend to be like giving speeches to people. I would like pretend to like, give one-on-one consultations like with my teddy bear because I remember always having to go to the counselor's office because I'm crying because some other kid was picking on me. And I remember the profound effect that it had that my counselor like sat there and listened to me and actually heard what I had to say, to the best of her ability. And I took that home and I started to do that with my stuffed animals, like but in reverse, right? So I became the comforter, the listener. I became the speaker, and I would also like line up a lot of my stuffed animals to perform and to sing and to express myself in all the ways that I felt like I really couldn't when I went to school, or I really couldn't when I was being observed among my peers. So that was a lot of my childhood, a lot of like magic, witchcraft, performing,
I love
being a counselor to
that.
my stuffed animals.
I love that. So what language did you speak?
I spoke Mandarin and
Okay.
I didn't learn English until I went to elementary school.
Wow. That's challenging, I think, at that age for sure. I mean, I've seen kids
Yeah.
I know. I mean, at the moment I'm in Barcelona, so I see a lot of kids from like, expat families that come over and trying to play with Catalan children. And they're like, what are you trying to tell me? I don't know what
Yeah.
you're saying. But that's so cute. I love that so much. And
Yeah.
then kind of throughout school, did you kind of go after the performing or the creativity or anything like that?
No, I actually didn't. I feel like there's that part of me that really, really wanted to be expressed, but it didn't actually come out until after high school. I had a very, very rebellious uh, teenage years, okay? And after high school, there were a series of events that happened. I ran away from home. I was like doing drugs and all the things. And I winded up being a stripper. I remember celebrating. It was like a friend's like promotion or something like that, and we all went to a strip club, and I was like, wow, this is like a whole entire world I have never seen before. And the first girl that had walked out, by the time I walked into the club, like I saw how people were watching her and paying her and like in awe of like this gorgeous woman expressing herself and her sensuality and her power and her sexuality. I was like, I want to be that girl. So like a week later, I'm back in the same strip club and I auditioned, right? And I got a job as a dancer. And so that was like my very first experience, like fully, fully expressing myself and, like dressing up as this higher version of like who I knew I was supposed to be and not being held back by any past identity because everybody in that club, like nobody knew who I was, and I got to pick, a whole new way of like looking, the way I dress, the way I compose myself. I even got to pick like a whole new name. So it was then that like my it's actually like one of my methods now that I teach to my clients is identity work. Because I also got to pick a name, right? That I was able to step into. And so I feel like it was in the club that my work now, it was birthed at that time. So I feel like that was really cool.
That's really cool. Had you kind of danced before that, even like just moved around in your room or been to any classes, or did you just step on stage and hope for the best in that
I just
audition?
I just stepped on stage and like hoped for the best. Okay, so I knew that I was gonna go audition, right? And the night at the club that I was with all of my friends, I was studying the way that these girls moved, and like it was so beautiful. And I took that home with me. And I did like a couple like practice dances, put on some music, but then I was like, all right, I'm ready to go. Let's do this.
Wow. Can you remember like either at the audition or maybe like the first night that you had to work there, were you nervous to get up on stage and dance, or was it just like, no, I'm gonna be this alter ego, I'm gonna be my own version of Sasha
Oh
Fierce,
my
I'm gonna
gosh.
go and do it?
I was so nervous. I didn't even think I would make it up on stage. Because like the strippers, like they have to wear those like 6, 7 inch heels, right? I
Yeah.
have never worn shoes that big in my life. And so like I was already kind of like wobbly trying to walk in these things. Like my palms were sweating. I had like boob sweat. Like it was just like dress sweating, and I'm trying to walk in these shoes. My legs are shaking, my heart's pounding out of my chest. And I remember just like hanging onto the pole and like, just hanging on for dear life, trying not to fall and trying to like, at least like move a little bit sexy. But yeah, the thing is, I got comfortable afterwards, and the work that I do now, and this is also part of my teachings, is that, we don't suddenly just become confident. Not all of us just walk onto a stage or appear on camera or come talk on a podcast like, oh, I've got this, like I'm just instantly born confident. Nobody has that. It's actually a process as you do the thing. As you are terrified, you go through the process of becoming her, of becoming the version of you that does the podcast, that speaks on stages, that launches the program, that does the thing. So, yes. Long story short, I was terrified walking on that stage.
Oh, that's so funny. But that's so true about the confidence. I always think that confidence is more of a muscle than like a personality trait. It's
Mhm.
I've met like some of the most people that you'd think have no self-doubt. They're the ones on stage singing to millions, or the ones like supermodels and that with their name everywhere. And they are often, it's more something they just have to switch on in the moment, just choose to be confident in that moment and just kind of keep going rather than always being completely self-assured. I mean, I think that there are definitely practices that we can do to strengthen that and become more like have that confidence be more of a constant thing rather than an up and down. But it
Yeah, definitely.
definitely 100% comes through just doing it.
Hmm. Yeah. Like I always say, just like jump first, regulate later.
Do you think like having it's almost like creating a character or like creating a different kind of personal brand where you're there where no one knows you and you have a different name and you're wearing something totally different than you'd be wearing on the street? Do you think that that kind of gave you the bit of a confidence boost or
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, And there's a second piece to that as well. It's like the way that I've explained this to people is that, if you go back to your hometown, like say you moved away for a while, and then you go back to your hometown and you see all these familiar faces, people that you went to high school with, and they're bringing up like the old inside jokes and like, oh, do you remember the time, blah, 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 blah. So the way that they see you is a past version of you that related to them. And so then that activates the vibration within you to act accordingly that's tied to your past. right?
Mm.
And so for me, it has always been so much easier to step into new identities and like newer versions of myself when I'm in a new environment. Of course, I can do it in an old environment like now because I have the tools to do it, but stepping into a new environment, moving into a new country, a new town, a new city, like having the new clothes, it's like, you have the available resources to step into that character without any sort of hindrance from the outside world.
Yeah, totally. I can definitely see that. And it is really true. I think that sometimes we can kind of the only way I can describe it is adopt a vibration. Like, depending on like whether you are going into maybe somewhere attached to your past or whether you're going to walk today as you want to in the future. So like adopting the vibration of the future self, whether that's whatever helps you get there. I mean, for all of us is different. It's like a certain lifestyle. For some of us it's clothes. Sometimes it's, different being in actual spaces that kind of put you in that vibration, I would say, or that kind of persona or that energy, um, is really, really powerful. And I know that you worked at that club, or you worked as a dancer for a very long time. Do you know
Mhm.
like what kind of kept you there that long?
The money was amazing. I'm not gonna
Yeah. So I
lie.
guess like you must have learned how to make the most amount of money doing that, right?
Yeah, 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 for sure. And also, like, I feel like I had all of my needs met. Um, I went there and I'm like dancing all night, like some of my favorite music, and the girls that I worked with, oh my gosh, the girls were some of the best friends I've ever had in my life. And so you get there and you get to hang out with your friends. And also at one of the clubs that I worked at, it was a really, I don't think it was like a five-star restaurant or anything, but the food was really, really good. So free food, your friends, free drinks, you get paid, good music. I mean, like, why
Yeah.
not?
I guess you're
Yeah,
there being adored as well the whole night. Like, why not?
yeah,
I love that. So kind of when you're starting out and you kind of had to learn the ropes, as we call it, or learn kind of how to make the most of that situation, be like
yeah.
make the most money or have the best night or how be the feel the best within yourself. Can you remember like some things that you learned that maybe you can apply to putting yourself out there in anything now?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I learned, this took some time, was that I was distinguishing not only quality over quantity when it comes to customers, but also doing as little as possible and making sure that it's aligned so that I'm not exhausted. Here's what I mean. So at a night working at the club, there could be a variety of men, and in the very beginning, I was doing dances for like all kinds of guys. It's like one after another, after another, after another. And I felt like my body was just wiped out. Like you can only do so many dances before being exhausted. Then I discovered another type of client, a client that would actually pay for my company. And he paid for the quality of my presence, the quality of my conversation. And that's when I learned how to cultivate my conversation, to really be able to be in the presence of these kinds of men. Because I mean, these men like are, I would definitely say like higher quality clients, the people who are like the bankers. We had like senators in there. Like these are like really amazing men. And me being 19 years old, I just started, what can a 19-year-old actually bring to the table as far as conversation to like a 50, 60-year-old like CEO or like banker, So really quickly, I had to learn how to keep up in conversation. So I had to start learning what they were talking about. I had to start taking courses. I had to start reading books. I had to start listening to YouTube videos of, the types of conversations that these men were having. And, little by little, I was noticing that I started to get invited to these tables more and more often, which meant I was doing less and less of these, $20 repeated lap dances, and
Yeah.
instead I was getting paid $500 for 10 minutes of sitting with a gentleman. And so I remember that when I came into the coaching industry. It's like it's really easy to have these like one-off, one-on-one coaching sessions, $99 a pop, and just like keep going. However, getting the high quality clients, and our clients aren't dumb, especially the high quality ones. They're making very intelligent, emotionally intelligent decisions in order to hire you, and they can feel in your essence, in your energy, the quality that you carry. And so I remember this, and I know that my clients really appreciate the quality of my listening, the quality of my conversation, how I can hold them no matter what they are going through. And so, for example, like one of the things that I've shared with a past client is I I get a little bit irritated when I hire a coach and she's sending me Voxer messages back and forth, and she's like at dinner, or she's like going for a walk, and I can like hear her kids in the background or something like that. What I really like to cultivate in my containers is that, when I'm responding to you, I make sure that my energy is clear. I make sure 100% that I am completely available to receive what you are saying and also to respond. So I'm not going to be having my kid around. I'm not going to be out at dinner responding to your Voxer message. And also, I'm not going to, like let's just say like I had an argument with a partner or something like that. I'm not going to be responding to you 15 minutes later, because that energy is still present in my field. And I don't want that translated and polluting our container, because you paid for that. You paid good money for me to have the quality of the presence and the energy that is available to you.
I love that. That is so uh applicable, I would say, to so many different channels, whether it is like coaching or being of service to people of any kind, or whether it's selling your art, putting your art in places, having your music heard by people. I think a lot of us, we get caught into this idea of, well, we just need to have it out a lot. Like everyone needs to have it. We need to put it out everywhere. I need to put out a post on Instagram. It's got to go viral so many people in the world can see it. But actually, I
Mhm.
think that if you create a more personal experience for people, for whatever
Mhm.
you're doing, whether you're an artist, whether you're a singer, whether you're a dancer, you can kind of create a more luxury experience for people. Then you can do less better and
Mhm.
conserve like your creative energy. So our creative energy is not a limitless thing. Our energy in general, our vitality is not a limitless thing. And I think to kind of have that discernment to see, okay, like how can I use my energy the best? How can I get
Mhm.
how can I get the most without burning myself out? Because that's so easy, I guess, also, especially doing when you're doing something physical.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
I
So
can also relate the how like we have to show up on social media and be consistent with that. I can also relate that to the club, because the club that I worked at, you had to be on stage once an hour. And it was that one time an hour that the whole room got to see who you were, because your name was announced and like you're on stage and you're doing your performance, right? And um, if you utilize that time correctly, you're making eye contact and remembering like who could be your next customer that you go and sit with. Okay. And that's something that I did all the time. Every time that I went on stage for once an hour, like I'm taking these mental notes. Okay, like this guy looked at me, this guy, had a great vibe. I'm gonna go say hi to him. This person tipped me. I'm gonna go thank him and like start a conversation. So I'm remembering all of these potential customers I think I can go sit with. And it's the same thing on social media. I didn't want to go up on stage every hour, especially when, I was already doing dances on the side. And it's the same thing with social media. It's like a lot of us don't want to show up all the time, every day. But if you do it with an intention, you can really scope out like and call in like your next potential people. It's kind of like being on stage. Like you make the post, you sharing your stories and you're watching, who am I feeling connected to? Who am I feeling aligned with? Who is responding to me right now? And then you reach out to those people.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely an element of like being aware, being present, being I suppose the word I'm looking for is like listening to your audience. And they might not be saying things to you, but listening to their energy more, or listening to like, oh, okay, like I see that name pop up a lot. And it might not
Mhm.
be that you have to reach out to them cold, but you can then just kind of see like, oh, okay, this is the kind of person now that is interested in what I'm doing. And you get a better idea of who you're speaking to then, because otherwise you can kind of speak to no one if you don't really know who you're talking to, right?
Right.
Yeah. So after I'm intrigued to know like what kind of led you to then leave that industry or leave that space at the time.
Well, I ended up getting pregnant and becoming a mom. And yeah, I felt like at that time I wanted to do something different. And I started a blog actually. I started this like parenting blog, and I was teaching people about conscious parenting and natural parenting. I was like one of those non-toxic households, eating all organic, using the cloth diapers and breastfeeding. I was one of those moms. And then that eventually turned into me breaking into trying to do some health coaching. And then the health coaching evolved into sexuality and sensuality for women. Um, and then the same women that I was working with started asking me like, well, how are you making money doing this online? And so then there was more of an interest of like the business side of it. So then I was sharing and teaching about the business aspect of it for a little while. And more recently, I felt like, like I feel like with the business stuff, like I liked it. Um, but it's always been like the golden thread of empowerment and really helping women rise that I really, really, really loved, because it wasn't so much about teaching you how to charge your worth. It's like, helping you stand in your worth and letting the world know, like, this is what I'm charging. This is what I'm worth, and standing up for yourself. It wasn't so much about like, yeah, start the business. It was about like, really claiming what you want and stop letting anybody else tell you that you can't. So more recently, like I've let go of the business aspect of it, and I've decided to solely focus on the empowerment and transformation for women.
Love that. And I think especially like even if you do run a business, there's I always say that strategies and things like that can only get you so far. If you
Mhm.
can't like really believe and put your energy behind what you're trying to sell, or put your full belief in the vision that you have, and really empower yourself to even dream bigger than that, you'll only get so far. And then when you start to like actually have your energy behind it, and your energy is kind of matches the actions that you're taking, I suppose, then that's how we achieve so much more in a smaller amount of time, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that for sure.
Yeah. Is there something that maybe if there's people listening that are finding that they're second guessing themselves a lot about what they're creating in the world or how they're putting it out there, do you have like some tips or some things that you would normally teach your clients that you would be open to sharing that might help those people in that kind of situation?
Yeah, my biggest question is like, what else do you need? So I was speaking to a client recently, and she had told me about how she had been sitting on this idea and she really, really wants to launch it, but she's scared. Um, And as far as I can remember, I think she's been sitting on this idea for like the last 6 months, if I have the timeline correct. And so I asked her, like, what else do you need? And she's like, well, I don't know. I have to put it together and then I need like the marketing stuff and I have to see about a venue. And I was like, all right, so let's start one by one. What do you think you need to plan out? And she's like, well, actually, I already have the plan. I was like, all right. So, because she had been thinking about this forever. So what I tell people is that, you think you're not ready, but I bet you've already been percolating a plan this whole time. You already know at least the first couple steps of what you need to do to get you there. And the rest is just excuses. So I kept asking her, I was like, all right, well, how about the marketing material? You said you needed to get that together. She's like, well, yeah, I already made it on Canva. I just haven't like, I just haven't like tweaked it yet. And I was like, all right, so you already have the plan together. You already like, have it in a Canva template. Like, what else do you need? Like, okay, let's talk about the venue. What do you think about the venue? And she's like, well, I already asked my friend if I could do it at a restaurant, and she said yes. I'm like, why are you not launching this now? So like I'm knocking out like all of the excuses that she has. All the reasons that she tells me she's not ready, she's already had in her mind. She's already been thinking about this like forever. She just needed that little bit of a push to get out there. And so what I did with her on the call, since she already had everything ready, I made her launch it within that hour on our call. And as she launched it, she already had two people interested before we hung up.
Wow.
Um, so what I tell people is, if you really feel like you're not ready, just drop in and think about all the nights that you stayed up thinking about this idea, formulating a plan. And like we're women, we know how to plan like crazy. Like we are like 10 steps ahead of like so many situations. So I have no doubt that you already have some sort of a plan in your mind. You just need to execute. You've already been prepping for this. What else do you need?
That's so true. I think even if we haven't got like as concrete a plan as she had, she kind of already done all the work. She just needed to push the button. That's so funny. But I think even if we don't have that, as a visionary human being, you will have the plan in your head. Like you'll have the vision of what it's going to look like in your mind. And it might not actually look like that in real life, which again is something that we hold us back sometimes because when the visual doesn't match the audio, we think it's like not good enough somehow. But you won't realize that while you're like staring out the window of a train going somewhere, your mind is planning this thing. You're visualizing the steps you need to take. You visualizing yourself doing that stuff. And as you say, like what more exactly are you waiting for? I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I sometimes feel like it helps take the pressure off if you look at this project or look at whatever it is that you want to do. Just it's an experiment. It's like it doesn't make it feel so serious if it's just an experiment. You're just doing this to collect some information to see if you even like doing it and find out what happens. No big deal.
Yeah, exactly. I think again we can put so much pressure on this next thing I launch has to be the one that's going to make me millions. This next painting that I paint has got to be the one that's going to get in galleries. The next song is going to be the one that, it becomes number one or kind of makes me break the industry, etc., etc. And that really puts way too much pressure on yourself, which puts too much pressure on your creativity. It sucks the
Mhm.
fun out of it. And I think it does keep us stuck because then that's where so much fear comes from, I think, because it's the pressure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. On that note, I'd love to know kind of as a lot of people listening to this are the kind of people that are chasing life on their own times. They're kind of doing their own thing. And with that, it comes with a lot of battles and a lot of external noise often, like to chase like the vision that you have for the kind of life that really feels authentic to you can push against other people sometimes. So I kind of love to know, like, in pursuing the paths that you've chosen, like, did you have questions in your own mind or from people outside of you that really kind of made you question your choices or question whether creating a life on your own terms was something you could do?
Oh, for sure, for sure. Oh my gosh, I had like everybody against me. Yeah, I mean, I was living in the States, for my whole life. And when I decided that I wanted to pick up and leave and become a digital nomad, single mom, I had everyone telling me that it was such a stupid idea. Because at the time, people saw me as like not financially stable, and I can't just like pick up and like leave the country with the kid. It's irresponsible. I'm removing myself and separating myself from support and my family. Like, what if something goes wrong? Everything could go wrong. You're in a different country, you don't speak the language, da 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 da. And I just knew that if I continued in the footsteps of these people who were telling me that I couldn't do it, 30 years down the road, I'm going to have a life just like theirs. And if their life does not completely inspire me, I cannot continue to listen to them, because their thoughts are becoming my thoughts, and my thoughts are becoming my emotions, which become my behaviors, which, become my outcome. So I really had to be super, super discerning about what I was internalizing when people were telling me these things. And these were people, that were very close to me. Um, and I decided to leave anyway. And it wasn't until I think like my first year living abroad that these same people were telling me like, "Oh my gosh, your life is so inspiring. How did you do it? How did you just pick up and leave?" And I was like, "Weren't you the same one telling me that I couldn't do it?" you know so you have to be very careful whose voice you're listening to, and these people who are telling you that you can't do these things is probably not even their voice either. It's probably some other teacher that told them when they were little, or parents that told them when they were little that they couldn't do it, so they're just pretty much like perpetuating it by regurgitating what they know to tell you. So what I say is just, yeah, be very discerning and always listen to yourself and watch your own self-talk and see if you can figure out where that's coming from too. Because I know that like a lot of my negative self-talk, it's not actually me. It does come from a parent. It does come from a teacher who once upon a time, like, thought I would amount to nothing. It was like from an ex, or something like that. So a lot of these like disempowering voices, a lot of times like are not even yours.
Yeah, I'd say most of the time they are like, there might be somebody that there might be somebody like just a general societal norm of, you should be doing this at this age, you should be doing this at this age, you should be doing this at this age, you have to get a job like this to get a house like this, and da 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 da. And it takes bravery to kind of wake up to what you actually desire, and wake up to, actually, you know what, I'm going to do this instead, and I'm again going to experiment and just kind of see see where that takes me and see what happens. And I think living abroad is obviously a big leap, because you move like literally across to the other side of the world, and also it's not even that, it's a completely different culture because you live in Thailand.
Right, yeah.
Is there something, like, because I don't live in England anymore either, I live in Barcelona, and there's definitely a learning curve and a different level of yourself that comes out, I think, when you do live in another country. Do you think that's kind of what happened to you, like a different journey and a whole new learning and a whole new layer to yourself that's come out since you moved?
Oh yeah, for sure. I discover things about myself that there's no way I would have known had I stayed in the States. There's so many new communities that I didn't even know existed that came into my awareness. I've made some of the best friends I've ever had in my life. Um, and also for my daughter too. We were talking earlier about me going to school in the very beginning and like not speaking English. But for my daughter, it's like she has a lot of Thai friends, and their method of communication is Google Translate. So they're like passing the phone back and forth, trying to explain a game to each other, and like making sure that like everybody gets it. It's so cute because she has these friends over, and they're not really talking, they're playing, and then every now and then, you'll hear like Google Translate, explaining an instruction to a game that they're trying to figure out.
That's so cute.
Yeah. So you definitely find out what you're capable of. When you're in a brand new country, you don't speak the language, you don't know where like the nearest grocery store is, or the pharmacy, or how to get a car, or navigating like all these visa situations. It was a little bit daunting for me at first, but you learn to figure these things out. Just like within in entrepreneurship, there's going to be all these little components, and you'll just figure it out. And eventually, they're not going to be such daunting things anymore. It just kind of becomes part of the norm. And what used to feel like a really big problem is no longer a big problem. It's just a little task that you have to do.
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
for sure. And would you say, I'm interested to know, I don't know, like this question just came into my mind when you were speaking there. Do you think that your business, or like the outward expression of like what you're creating in the world now, your business that you share and everything, do you think it would have been like the same had you not moved?
No, not in the least. No, no, no. Um, I think that me staying safe in the US would have translated to me staying safe in my business as well. And there would not have been a lot of, I just wouldn't have been like very fun to watch, or very, like my life just would not have been inspiring whatsoever. And that was what I knew I also needed to change, because if I'm going to be a leader in this and be an example of this, I need to live it. I can't just tell people, oh, do the scary thing, but then I can't book a ticket to leave the country, and I can't be pushing people to, um, to chase their dreams when I'm kind of holding back on mine. I can't tell people to get over their excuses when I'm hanging on to mine, and like I still can't make the leap, and I feel like my situation is a little bit unique because I am a single mom, and I have not just a daughter, but I also have a son. And at the time, I had a very strict custody order in place that forbid me to leave the country. And I hear this from a lot of other single moms saying like, yeah, I would love to travel the world with my kid, but like I have a custody order and like my ex and all this thing, blah, 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 so I can't, and I wanted to be the living example that, yeah, I also have an ex. I also have a custody order, but guess what? I did it anyway. So there really are no excuses. And I love being the example of that and showing women that, you might think you have these things in your way, and some of them are very, very legit, like a legal custody order, that's a very legit thing. But even then, you can rise above that and figure out a way to have both.
Yeah, absolutely. The obstacle is always the way. It is the way. We can come across so much red tape in doing what we want to do, even if it's something as simple as starting a business in your own country. We can have a
Yeah.
lot of red tape and a lot of paperwork, which is something we all really hate. And I live in Spain, which is like the capital of paperwork in the world. I swear. But it's just you will figure it out and you will find a way. And that often it's easier than you think it is. Sometimes we kind of take on again other people's narratives of like, oh, that's impossible, you're not going to be able to do that, no one can do that, you can't do it with your situation, or it's going to be really hard, da 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 da. And then if you kind of choose to kind of listen to that, yeah, take it on, but think like, okay, well, I'm also open to having a different experience here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you will find a way, and it
Yeah.
often is a lot easier than everyone's saying that it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I kind of want to wrap it up by a question that I don't know why it's been on my mind to ask people recently, and I've been asking it to everyone. I would really love to kind of know your answer. Is there something that you find that people, there's a common misconception that people have about what you do or about yourself, either or both?
Hmm. I think it goes back to the confidence piece that we spoke about. Um, I get a lot of compliments, and people tell me that they think I'm super, super confident. They're, like, oh, I wish I could be as confident as you. I wish I could be as brave as you are. I don't know how you do it. It just comes like so naturally. And it doesn't. That's the misconception. Like, it's not like I was not born like this, like whatsoever. Like it took so much work. And even now, in some social settings, or like when I'm leading a workshop or a retreat, like I get still really, really nervous, but I step up. It's like you said, it's like it's training a muscle. It's not something that people just naturally have. And no matter how calm and collected I may seem in any situation, there's always going to be this like little 5-year-old inner Shay that's like, palms sweaty, knees shaking, like, can I do this? I don't know. But my queen is like, yes, babe, yes, you can. And then we go on with the show.
I love that. And that's so key for people to know, I think, because we can often look at other people that maybe are doing the things that we want to do, maybe a few steps ahead of us, and just think, well, I can't do that because I'm not that person. Like, she's successful because she is really confident, or she's successful, people listen to what she says because of the way she speaks or the accent she has, or because she already has $1 million, or because of this or because of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's never the case. There's always something else behind that. And there's always, I think, a bit of a inner duality of the 5-year-old going, I don't know if I can do this. And then somebody else in there going like, yes, you can.
Yeah.
We're doing it anyway. I love that. Well, Shay, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you. I'll of course leave the links down below for people to find you, but just in case people want to search right away, where can everyone find you and follow you now?
I am primarily on Instagram at shaylnn.lavelle. It's spelled SHAYLNN. It's spelled a little bit funny.
Love that. Well, of course, leave the link below to find Shay right away. But otherwise, thank you again so much for coming on the show. And thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Maverick Mind. I hope that you've loved it. And if you have, I would appreciate it so much if you would subscribe and write a 5-star review on wherever you're listening to this podcast from. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, I invite you to join me over on Instagram at maverickmindco, or on my website maverickmind.elliefoden.com. And I'll see you in another podcast very, very soon.